Three, two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and tonight we are going to be continuing our Animation April with a choice by me. And I'm going to be honest, this was my first time watching the film. I chose it because it was one of the ones that I had picked up from the Disney collection that I knew it was probably technically up my alley, like when I was like a teenager, and I kind of like missed the boat on it when it came out, and when I picked it up, I just hadn't gotten around to watching it. So I'm glad that we were able to get a chance to let me watch it. So, it is a film that was filmed in 1985. It was directed by two directors, Ted Berman and Richard Rich. And it's in association with Silver Screen Partners too. It was the 25th animated feature of Disney, and it is loosely based on two books in the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander, which was a series of 5 novels that are basically based on Welsh mythology. But we have the story is basically by Ted Berman, Vance Gary, Joe Hale, David Jonas, Roy Morita, Richard Rich, Art Stevens, Al Wilson, and Peter Young. The books that they're based on are The Book of Three and The Black Cauldron. And it stars the voices of Grant Bardsley, Susan Sheridan, Freddie Jones, Nigel Hawthorne, Arthur Mallet, John Biner, Phil Fondacaro, and John Hurt. Which the only one that I recognize out of that is John Hurt. But it's narrated by John Huston. And so on and so forth. So let's see what IMDb says about the film. A young boy and a group of misfit friends embark on a quest to find a dark magic item to ultimately of ultimate power before a diabolical tyrant Ken. So, why don't we go with first impressions on the film, starting all the way to our right. Let's start with you, Crow. Was this a first time watch for you?
Yes.
Okay. And what were your thoughts on it?
Disney, so Disney does a great job of the film, especially their animated films. So no complaints there. Great movie.
Okay. Is that pretty much your first impression then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Heading over to you, Tammy. Was this the first watch for you?
Yes, it was. I thought it was cute. It was, like Crow just said, definitely Disney, and I actually thought it was older than it actually is, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Okay. Heading over to you, Forrest. What were your thoughts on this? Was this a first watch for you?
No, this is actually the third time I've seen this. Actually, when this movie came out, it didn't do well. I wasn't even born when this movie came out because it came out in '85. I was born in '87. But from what I understand, this movie was not a box office hit, and Disney did not. And because there was a lot of backlash towards because this was a much darker movie than what Disney had put out up to this point, as far as their animated canon, so Disney pretty much after this movie left theaters, they shelved it for about 13 years before they finally put it out on home video. And I remember getting my grandmother giving me the VHS tape for my birthday when it came out. When it finally came out on video, I watched it once and then like didn't think much of it. And then I think I was on. I think it was just and a few years ago in the middle of like right at the height of the pandemic, I was like on a kick. I was on a kick of 80s fantasy movies. Like Excalibur and Conan and the Dark Crystal. And this was among the movies that I decided to among the movies that I revisit. I gave that I was watching while I was on this big 80s fantasy kick. I think the story itself is kind of, because I know that they had to cut some stuff out because of there was some I guess some of the young test audience didn't react too well to it, but I don't know. I feel like it could have been. I do feel like the pacing was a little slow. Could have been a little tighter. Maybe the script could have been a little more tightened, but the animation is excellent. I kind of I really enjoy. I dug the as a horror fan. I dug the more like the darker, more morbid aspects of the movie. So I kind of just had a mixed opinion on it. I do think that I think it had a lot. I mean, actually, on one hand, I like it, but like it's like it's definitely nothing like Disney has done before or since then.
Well, to be honest, the film that outgrossed this movie,
Care Bears
movie.
Yeah, I remember watching. I don't know if you ever saw Waking. You ever saw the documentary? Have you seen the documentary Waking Sleeping Beauty?
A little bit.
Okay, yeah, because I remember they talked about how this movie got beat by Care Bears at the box office. Like, oh man, like I could not imagine that happening now. I feel like if these movies, I feel like if both of those movies were released now, Black Cauldron might fare better. Since I feel like nowadays audiences would be more receptive to a darker animated film, to a darker animated movie. So I think my overall impression on it is just that it's definitely good. Definitely strong on style and a little light on the substance. It's kind of light on the substance. And I think maybe they with some I think maybe with some if they maybe with some if they had tightened the script a little more, it would have been more solid on the substance end of things. But as far as the anime, I think this was the animation though is fantastic, is excellent. It's just the pace. I just found the pacing was kind of a little slow. Pacing was a little slow for me though.
Okay.
Actually, that's the animation, but I also like the dark. I also dug like the dark, more like kind of dark. Dug the more dark, the really dark, macabre elements of it.
Okay. Is that pretty much it then for you?
I think that's it. I just also want to point out that Tim Burton and John, that both Tim Burton, Henry Selick, and John Kricfalusi were among the many animators on this movie.
Okay. Heading over to you, Brandon. Was this a first time watch for you?
Yes, actually. It's one of the few Disney classics, so to speak, that I've never seen. I've heard of it. I've had it for ages. And I was kind of glad that I got the excuse to finally see it. But, it was fun to watch. I thought the reputation made it seem much darker than it really was. But still, it is a decent film. I enjoyed it mostly. I can still see Disney had some of those Don Bluth influence to it, though he wasn't involved, I believe.
I think he had got struck out on his own by then.
Yeah, but it wasn't that long ago, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Because so this was 85 and Secret of Nim was 82.
But of course, I'm sure that a lot of the animators probably had been influenced anyway. So, but it definitely felt like there was some influence there, to be sure. I liked it well enough. I thought it was pretty fun as a nice adventure. I felt like it could have benefited from going on a little bit longer as far as character development and so on. And I felt like there were too many comedic characters. I felt like there were 2 mascots instead of 1. And between Gurgi and the other dude, which reminds me of Dr. Smith from Lost in Space, I felt like, oh my. But still, as far as things go, definitely didn't feel like Disney for the most part. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways. That's all I got to say about that.
Alrighty. Well, I know I've done a lot of introduction for the movie, but as for my, as I said, this was my first time watching the film. I always felt like this movie was at first I thought it was older too, because I felt like this may have been done before Sword in the Stone, but looking back at the Sword in the Stone was done in 1964, so it does have some Merlin-esque qualities, because you got an older man who seems to have a young boy doing like his bidding, and he's a little bit like a wizard. And the only thing that the boy does is he takes care of
Pigs.
this pig, you know.
Actually, it's funny. You should mention Sword in the Stone, because early on in the movie, they're like one of the squirrel. Like if you remember, like when Arthur and Merlin turning themselves into squirrels.
Yeah.
So one of those squirrels appears at the beginning of this movie. if you look without blinking.
Probably just use the same model.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah. So the boy's name is, I know it starts with a T.
Talbin. No, Talbin.
Taran.
Yeah.
And I guess what they call him is a swine herder. He is tasked with taking care and feeding this young pig, and I guess it's like, looks like some kind of oatmeal that he gives him, and not only does the cat not like this stuff, but neither does the pig.
I was gonna say it's pig slop.
But no matter what, it seems to turn this pig into a kind of a magical creature, whatever it is, because he starts to or the pig starts to act funny, and the old man decides to hey, bring him here, you know, and he says some certain words to the pig, and the pig puts its snout into the you know, the water bowl that he's set in front, and he appears to start to tell the future, which evidently involves evidently a journey of sorts that the boy is going to go on to find this black cauldron, and has to do with like the horned king and some other people. But I believe what happens is while the pig was saying or showing stuff about the future, because the horned king it happens to be a little bit of a magical person too. It seems he's found out that this pig can actually foretell the future, while they were, you know, casting this spell on it. So he tells Taryn to take the pig and go to this cabin in the woods and get as far away as from this place as you can. And basically shoos him on his way. And he says something to the effect, he's got so much to do, so little time, or some shit like that, you know? So he begins his journey. What do y'all think about that very beginning piece? And his upbringing.
Did Joe get to all the first impressions?
Huh? Oh,
Hello, I'm here.
hello. Why don't we go into Dustin's first impressions then? I didn't realize you'd showed up. So, was this a first time watch for you?
Actually, yeah. So I'd heard of this movie before quite a few times, but for one reason or another, this was something I just never got around to watching. So I saw it for the first time today, and I had heard a fair number of criticisms of it. And I think a lot of those apply. Like some people say I've heard people say the ending comes somewhat abruptly. Like it's not clear exactly what happens in the last like 20 or so minutes. And I agree with that because it does seem like there are scenes missing, as was mentioned earlier, like that stuff was truncated from this. And it's only 80 some minutes, so it is a little on the shorter side for a feature. But that said, I thought it was pretty good. Some people say it's got good ideas, but it doesn't do enough of them. It seemed like just a fun, like basic fantasy movie. I mean, some of the imagery was pretty nasty. Well, not to me, but I could see how it would be like, oh wow, there's a lot of skeletons in this. So I could see younger children being sensitive to that. But overall, I mean, I thought it was fine. And I know that this kind of flopped theatrically, and they had to reorganize how they were doing animated movies. At least that's the story as I understand it. And I'm curious to learn more about that from you guys, who I assume know a lot more about this than me, but I thought it was fine. The effects look pretty good. What effects you can have in animation of this style and era. Yeah, I liked it. I'll probably watch it again at some point.
Okay. Well, I was somewhat getting into the plot, but I believe we were at Taryn just leaving his swineherder residence in kind of a quick manner to get as far away from the place as he could. And, I guess he loses the pig along the way and runs into a comical character that I'm not quite sure what it is. It looks like a puppy, but it may not be.
It's a cross between like a puppy, a yeti, and a golem.
He did sound kind of like Andy Serkis's Gollum voice.
Yeah, he did.
He reminded me so much of Gollum, and that I was like, oh my god. So Schmiegel's coming with the group. He's going to betray him some point in the other.
I bet you Andy
When he
Serkis
first
saw
started
it.
talking, I looked at David and I was like, you know who that sounds like?
I'm sure that this is exactly where he got his voice from if he'd actually watched this, Andy Serkis. But the voice of Gurgi was actually John Biner.
According to, actually, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article on the Black Culture. Apparently, Gurgi did inspire Serkis's portrayal.
Okay, so I can definitely see that. Well, in any case, I guess he takes an apple that he's had along, and they have a little bit of a, you know, uh, thievery a moment where he's like taking the apple and giving it back and all that jazz, and somehow they get on the subject of okay, well, I've got to gotta find my pig, and once he comes across, I believe the pig, I believe these two dragons end up taking the pig like away, and as we kind of see, it kind of goes towards this castle that we've somewhat already been shown, because we do get an introductory moment
We
of
get an
the
introduction
horn.
to the Horn King.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
I
do
just
have.
wanted to say
King's
that,
castle.
I just wanted to say that I was paying attention when those creatures show up, and I'm pretty sure they're Wyrens because of like how their wings are. Like, because a dragon has, apparently there are a lot of rules for this sort of thing. So a dragon has 2 arms, 2 legs, and wings, whereas Wyrens have legs and wings on their arms. And these had wings on their arms, so I want to say they were Wyrens. There are different rules for drakes, but a lot of places seem to use drake interchangeably with Wyren.
They were definitely interesting creatures.
I don't know why, but the castle always reminds me of the Dark Crystal for some reason when I see this.
That's a foreboding fantasy castle. I mean, they I feel like they use the same architect, yeah.
And I believe that the Horn King has a stooge that it looks like he's like a midget goblin, or whatever, and
The
does
heroes aren't limited to their
kinda like-
mascots.
it's kind of like an Igor-like creature. Who does his bidding, and so he seems pretty proud of himself that he's caught this magical pig that can foresee the future, and meanwhile, while that is going on, we've got young Terran who has decided to go and save his pig, and he thinks that Gurgi is a coward for not coming along. And he ends up climbing the castle walls. And while he's climbing the castle walls, he's able to move a few of the stones on the castle wall to get into the place. And he is able to peer over this setting where you've got a room where all the men of the, I guess these are soldiers of the Horn King, that he has already. Like, these are gathered thieves and vagabonds and unsavory types that seem to be having the time of their lives, getting drunk and eating stuff. And I believe the pig is brought in, and at first they're about to torture the pig, and because the thing that the Horned King wants is the Black Cauldron and its whereabouts. So when the pig doesn't give up that information and whatnot, the young Terran, he kind of runs in to kind of save the pig's day, and he basically doesn't know how to get the pig to tell the future, or actually he does, but he doesn't give it up right away, and then he does. which then the pic shows like a little bit of like where it's supposed to be, but I believe it doesn't tell enough. So I believe it's then that Taryn is thrown into the dungeon, and it picks up from there. There as the story progresses. Did anyone want to mention or talk about like the characters inside the castle, the Horned King at all, the Goblin at all?
I gotta say, I dug the horn. For me, the strongest part of the movie was the villains.
Oh,
I mean, granted, that's kind of the case with a lot of older Disney movies. Is the villains are usually the scene stealers, or like they had the most fun. And
He's
I
probably
think,
the most interesting.
he's the most sinister I've seen, other than what is her name?
Maleficent.
Yeah, he's probably the most sinister next to Maleficent when it comes to villains from Disney.
Yeah, or actually, I'd say even the Queen from Snow White. I mean, come on, she wanted Snow White's heart put in a box.
I think being like a lich probably contributes a lot to that too, because being visibly like a skeleton
with horns
early on.
Now,
like that casts an impression.
I want to say that with the Goblin, at least we can say that if the heroes have to be saddled with a annoying mascot, so does the villain. At least the villain has to deal with the same stuff.
That is true. So while Taryn is in the dungeon, there is a young girl who ends up digging her way through the floor, and I guess she is quite surprised that he is there, and as he is of her showing up, and her name is Princess Elonway, or at least that's who I think she is called, and she is voiced by Susan Sheridan. And I guess she thinks that she has been a prisoner wherever she is from, and I guess she's there because she was bored. But she says that Taryn can come along with her if he wants, and they kind of just start to go bumbling around in the castle, and somewhere along the way, he finds I believe it's Taryn who actually stumbles upon a wall, and that crumbles, and inside this crumbling wall is like a crypt area, which I liked the look of that crypt for some reason, but he ended up finding a sword, and I guess Taryn is a boy of flights of fancy, because he earlier in the film he dreamed that he was like a knight and being like congratulated for killing the Horned King and whatnot, and I think that was like a dream of adventure that he thought that at the time, and once he got
cute little daydream,
he had another daydream about, and he got excited with this sword. And it turns out this sword is actually kind of cool. It seems to have some magic powers that seems to make him like this ultimate warrior, where it definitely helped him to at least fight against some of the characters that were in the castle, and helped in his endeavor to escape. But before they escape, they end up.
The sword is pretty cool. Like it basically can fly around by itself, and appears to sometimes turn itself into lightning. Like it's pretty awesome.
I wonder if it possessed him at some point, because he had this weird manic glee when he was going around just waving it around, laughing and all of this, which it could just be him.
I questioned that too, and then
Yeah.
Tammy told me, hey, he's a boy. He's got flights of fancy like this, you know.
Well, the sword clearly has a little bit more to it, because it almost seems like some sort of plundered holy relic, in the way it acts.
I wish
maybe there is something like if you hold it, you're like inspired to do good or something.
I think that this is one of the things that really that bugs me about the movie, is I feel like there's a lot of good here, but it's over too quick, and it feels like big chunks are left out. So
Yeah, it does feel very.
Well, there is a deleted scene that wasn't entirely like finished. That was on the disc that I watched, where they met a group of magical creatures called that were ruled under the king of Fair, which obviously these were like fairy creatures, and it was them who actually gave him the sword instead of actually him stumbling upon it.
Yeah, that could have worked. I feel like more. I just feel like there was development for the characters, but I felt like it wasn't earned. And I do feel like this would have been fixed by, even if you made this 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes longer, I think that you could have explained more the sword's connection, because you get the sword for a few minutes and then it's gone not long after. And the kid's afraid at first, but then goes into this maniacal glee of, yeah. I don't know. I feel like
it's a little over the top, don't you think?
Well, it went too quickly. I see where they were going with it, and I feel like there's an awesome story there. There's something in the editing, maybe. And
I wish I would have gotten like a little bit of the history of the sword to like along the way, or to make it seem like it was like something that he should not have actually like given away like as selflessly as that, you know. But we're getting to that, because before he escapes, they run into another character that evidently is a little bit of a bard, or a musician, or what have you, tell a storyteller of the like he had musical instruments. He had this harp, which was kind of funny, because every time he lied, a string would like snap, kind of like a Pinocchio thing. So that was kind of interesting, at least of that character. I forget what the name of that character was. Give me a second. Was it Fluter? Yeah, Fluter. And he ends up somewhat escaping with them with the help of this magical sword, and all the creatures and the felonious characters are trying to chase after them, but I believe they're all. Are they all able to jump into the moat? I feel like like he tried to jump into the moat at one point in time. No, they escaped the castle at that point, but there was a point in time where he actually tried to jump into the moat, and the pig is like the pig was able to jump and escape, and the kid was not. That was earlier.
Yeah, the pig didn't need their help. The pig was more competent than they were. Just take the sword. He'd be good. He'd win.
But yeah, so they end up they end up outside the castle, and I guess the young princess, she's a little doubtful about Terran, especially since Terran is starting to act kind of like he's kind of starting to act like full of himself. Like he's the one who got them out. He's the warrior now, and you know, he's telling her like, what are you? You're just a girl, you know, things like that. And basically kind of is a little hurtful towards her. So she runs off a little bit, and then it's like he thinks better of it and goes over and talks to her. And I think at this point in time is when Fluter runs into Gurgi, and Gurgi tries to take his hat, and he offers him his musical harp thing. What do y'all think about this ragtag group so far? Anyone? How they interact with each other?
I think they're a fine like fantasy ensemble. Like they're just kind of pushed together in that escape from the castle, which happens pretty quick to the point that I'm not 100% sure how they got out of there.
I felt like Dr. Smith from I swear that's what he reminds me of from Lost in Space. But I feel like the Bard was a bit too much, because I felt like he and Gurgi kind of filled the same role as a kind of a mascot character for comedic reasons. But I would have been happier if they made him a little bit more of a serious bard, like somebody who could tell more lore, do some more like that. But that's me.
Okay. Well, I believe it's at this point that they, the two, the princess and the and Terran, they reconcile between each other, and he apologizes a little bit for you know, the words that he said, and he basically says that he wants to go and find this like black cauldron, and wherever it is, but he also wants to go and find his pig, because I don't think they've quite met up with the pig yet. And I'm trying to think how they actually meet, like these these fairy like people that
they get caught in a whirlpool, which was designed supposedly to keep people away, but ended up drawing them into their fairy kingdom instead. Apparently Grumpy was not too happy with that.
Yeah, so they meet a couple of characters that are part of this like fairy group of sorts, because they are magical creatures. They are able to disappear and reappear at will, and they basically know where the pig is. At first, they're a little standoffish, but one of them actually says, "Oh, you're looking for the Black Cauldron? I thought that was lost in like this like land. I suppose we could actually like show you where it is." And ultimately, they do. I'm trying to remember the name of the place that they actually said that it was, but it was evidently in a place that started with an M. But once they led them to it, it was evidently looking like it was like a cabin in the woods, not too far from there, and it was filled with like tons of cauldrons. So at first they were like, "Oh, well, where are we going to find the black cauldron in all this?" And then suddenly these like three witches that I think they are witches, but one of the witches ends up like seeming to fall in love with Fluter.
I was personally calling them the Fates because they didn't seem to really get named, or if they did, it was really quick and I missed it. But they basically are witches from all the evidence I have. So you can call
I
them
know
witches.
oftentimes with mythical stories, especially when it comes to like sometimes like the
Discrimination.
like the hands of fate in like Herculean mythology, so to speak, where you got like the three witches who hold the
Discrimination.
light of faith. But yeah. What do y'all think about those three? They seem to want want the sword. They know where the black cauldron is. No one's asked for it in like years.
Centuries, actually.
Centuries. Yep. So, what do y'all think about those characters? What about you, Tammy?
Huh?
Haven't heard from you in a while. Just figured I'd ask you what you thought of the characters.
Interesting.
Okay.
Well,
Anything else?
well, I mean, it's it's all fantasy, so they're
Okay. What about you, Crow? Would you call these three witches, or are you still saying discrimination?
I guess the witches remind me of Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, just a little bit. I could see that. But anyways, I guess they think that this is a good.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
I somehow I unmuted and then somehow got remuted, so I don't know what happened. Okay, so I was saying that yeah, I was just joking about the discrimination because yeah, it's normal for witches to be portrayed that way. So yeah, so yeah, it's all right. It's not a big deal. So call them witches or whatever. I was just joking.
Okay. But they end up striking a bargain with young Terran because he's got the sword that they want, and I guess because he really wants the Black Cauldron, wants to be able to destroy it. It seems like a good bargain at the time. Of course, Princess is telling him no.
Well,
and hello, Jacob.
I was just gonna say, if you look at it, they thought they were going to get the better end of the deal because they were looking as like, well, you can't destroy that thing, so you're just going to get frustrated, and we'll just take it back, and then we'll have the sword and the cauldron.
Alrighty, Jacob. Did you want to tell us your first impressions? Then was this the first time watch for you? Oh, I guess we lost him. Okay. Guess. So after the bargain was struck, this big black cauldron, and actually, before the black cauldron even showed up and came out of the ground, everything just kind of disappeared. Alrighty, are you? Oh, I guess he keeps. Okay. And yeah, everything disappears into like a big storm cloud because that's where the witches seem to have gone. And
Yeah, the witches just nope out of there with the sword. And it's like, here's your cauldron, and then it's well, now what?
Right.
And they do give them the rules for the cauldron at least, which apparently it's like an artifact in magic where you have to like sacrifice something to it, and it basically grants a wish.
Well, it seems like you sacrifice a soul, and that creates like an army of the undead.
That was the Horn King. That was what the Horn King wanted.
Yes, and
so it's not exclusively army of the undead.
No, it's not exclusively, because evidently to stop the magic, a pure soul who will offer themselves of a pure heart will be able to like stop this magic or from happening or whatnot. And as we saw, it kind of becomes a suction cup for like sucking other things into it after that's happened, but we'll get to that. Getting ahead of myself here, but we have the black cauldron show up out of the ground, and I think the black cauldron looks kind of ominous and looming. And that's when the midget goblin and the men of the Horned King's men show up, and we get the black cauldron being taken, and it looks like our three characters, because Gurgi decides to be a coward again, and stay behind, but
why are we randomly mean to Gurgi? Goddamn.
And the three, the princess, Fluter, and Terran, all appear to get tied up in the Horned King's lair. But it's none other than Gurgi who actually comes along. Yeah, let's see if Jake is finally able to connect. No, we'll give him a moment, but we'll. I believe it's Gurgi who actually steps up to the plate, and they say Gurgi, and he comes along and unties them, and he basically gets them untied, and I guess they're at a moment where the Horn King has actually taken and sacrificed something into the cauldron, and the undead skeletons begin to rise, and march out of the castle. But halfway through is when we get this moment where Terran thinks he's going to jump into the cauldron and save the day. But Gurgi steps up and says, "I have no friends," basically, and jumps into the cauldron. And it literally starts to upset the plans of the Horn King.
I was surprised he did that, because it's like, these people are clearly your friends. What are you talking about, Gurgi? I felt kind of sad.
It was a little sad, because honestly, he was the comic relief. He was, even though you could hear in him like the voice of Gollum, he was still a cute character, and in a sense, he reminded me of Stitch in the way from Lilo and Stitch too, just a little bit. But he ends up making sure that the magic starts to not work for the Horn King like he had expected, and you get this whole like sucking thing that seems to be happening, where it's just sucking everything into the cauldron, like now the magic has been corrupted. It needs it's hungry. You know, and at first you think that Terran is actually going to be sucked into it, because the Horn King is like, I'm not going to be sucked into this thing. No, sir, you are. You know, so and it turns out that the Horn King actually does and is not able to overcome this black cauldron catastrophe here that we have. What do y'all think about this whole entire moment here?
That scene where the Horn King gets his like bones and stuff sucked in there, it reminds me of a scene like right out of Heavy Metal, which is pretty cool for a Disney movie.
Yeah, I dug this. Yeah, I dug this part. This is my favorite moment of the movie.
The animation was spectacular in that part. Not necessarily kid friendly, but definitely on point.
Yeah, apparently when they were showing this to test audiences, it had kids fleeing the theater.
Okay. Well, and after the Horn King gets sucked into the Black Cauldron, it's then we have our characters band together again, and I believe they escape the castle once again, and I'm not sure exactly how they are able to talk to the three witches again, but don't they go to them for another bargain? Per se, because he wants Gurgi's life back.
The witches come in basically saying, well, I guess you don't need that cauldron anymore. I guess we'll just take it. And the bard was the one who says, we bargain, remember? And that's when they're able to bargain for Gurgi's life back at that point.
Okay. That's what I thought. Hey, Jake. Can you hear us? Oh, okay. I guess we'll continue here until Jake gets here then.
Does this work?
Yeah, works now.
Okay, I have no idea what is going on. My normal mic seems to be gone.
Oh,
I don't know why.
Huh.
So I plugged one in, and I guess it works.
okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
weird.
was this a first time watch for you?
Yes, it was. I'm sorry to be so late. That's just haven't had a chance to get to it before. And yeah, I think I may have seen a couple of scenes maybe when I was a kid, but I really have no recollection of this movie. Other than knowing, that this was like Disney before they got their much needed shot in the arm at
I would
the
say this was Disney's dark age.
pretty much, yeah. This was one of the last ones, was it not? I think they had maybe one or two after this, and then they had the
I
I
would
believe
say
this was the last one.
so they were basically went dark for about 4 years, huh?
I don't know. I sort of feel like their dark age kind of went from the time probably just the time after Walt died until around until maybe 89 when The Little Mermaid came out.
Right. Weird thing is, this one has a lot in similarity to some of the films that I kind of do consider classics. So, like in terms of the art style and whatever, um, it's a little smoother and more polished than say Jungle Book, but there's a lot of similarities in the art style basically from the late 60s up until this point, and especially I would say the 70s.
I agree.
This one reminds me a lot of the art style in like say Robin Hood and whatever.
Yeah,
So
like
that was kind of fun.
I wouldn't have like this movie came out about 4 years before The Little Mermaid came out,
Right.
and it feels like more like 14 more like 14 years.
Yes or no? In terms of structure and a lot of things, it does feel almost like a throwback to the 70s. But in terms of the thematic matter, it squarely fits in the 80s. And so it's kind of a weird hybrid. Like it feels like they were trying to join the crowd, but they tried to Disneyfy it, and it was weird.
Yeah, like I would say the witch, like for me, Gurgi and the witches definitely are very much Disney.
Yeah.
Everything else feels like it could have fit in with like heavy metal or Lord of the Rings.
Like the Horned King is dark for a Disney villain, and I didn't realize John Hurt voiced him. That was actually really cool. It's like, holy crap, that was John Voight, not John Voight, John Hurt.
John Hurt.
Yeah, and a couple of the voice cast were impressive. So yeah, for first viewing, I was a little underwhelmed. I'm glad I finally saw it, and I can definitely see why it has been a little bit of a polarizing film for people over the years. I would not call it one of Disney's strongest efforts, but I do give them props for trying, and it definitely had some pretty cool moments in it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were rounding out towards the end of the film when while you were struggling to come on, but I'll kind of rehash where we were. We were at towards the end of the the Cauldron had just been just sucked the Horned King into the Cauldron, and then I guess the three witches then appear to our characters of note: the Fluter, Princess, and Terran.
The fate of the Horned King was a particularly dark image for a Disney film.
Definitely, but I guess the witches were kind of like, okay, well, you don't need the Cauldron anymore, do you? So why don't we trade you this sword back to you, and we can have the Cauldron.
Well, the one wanted to just take the cauldron and trick them out of it, but the other one got the hots for the minstrel and was was kind of flirting with him by offering the sword.
Yeah, and I think they kind of reminded the witches that they do bargains, don't they? You know, so they tried to offer the sword, and Taryn kind of surprised us too with the wanting Gurgi back. So that's the one thing that he wanted back, and so once a bargain is struck, bargain is struck. So they brought Gurgi back, and at first it seems like he is not alive, but it gave him a moment, and voila, he is back on his feet, and everyone's happy, and it seems like they walk off into the sunset, and everything is back to normal, and that's pretty much the ending that we get. You know, seeing them walk off into like together, and the adventure that they've gone on, and of course we get the old man from the beginning saying that the lad has done well, for done well indeed, or something like that to that effect. So, what do y'all think about that ending there? I know, Dustin, you said that it seemed like it was rather rushed.
Yeah, it does happen pretty quickly where like Yuki sacrifices himself and the Horn King's zombie soldiers like, start falling apart. He's like, wait, what? And he runs to the cauldron and basically just gets sucked in and like, disintegrated. And then suddenly, like, they're out of the castle and they're all walking home like into the sunset. And it's like, well, wait, I feel like we're missing some steps here.
Well, they had to get out of the castle suddenly because the cauldron was a load-bearing boss, and they had to outrun it.
Oh, right. Fair point.
But yeah, so that is pretty much it. Now,
on the end, I'll say, in fairness to the witches, our supposed hero neglected to say he wanted Gertie back alive. He just said he wanted him back. So if they had returned his body, they would still have been meeting the deal. So part of me thought that that's exactly what they did, and I'm sitting there going, "This is dark for Disney." But yeah, I kind of expected he would eventually wake up, but it was they drew it out for a little bit.
yes, they did. But that being said, I think we're at production now. So since Jake, you weren't here for most of the discussion, why don't you tell us what were your thoughts on the production?
Well, I already talked a little bit about the art style, the animation style. I did think, especially with the cauldron activated and that sort of green fog and whatever, they did have some suitably creepy animation there toward the end that was kind of cool. There were some parts where it was too much of a throwback to earlier films. And you know, like the little henchman, for example, that the Horn King had, what they call Creeper, I think it is.
Yeah, Creeper.
And then like all the animal sidekicks, you know, especially Gertie, it kind of did feel like a throwback to a simpler era, and that was one of the reasons that the film, I thought, was a little schizophrenic a little bit. It didn't quite commit to a certain aesthetic, I thought.
Yeah.
But otherwise, for an animated film from the mid 80s, well, okay, and one other thing, the whole scene of everything being sucked into the cauldron. I don't know if anyone else felt the same way, but I'm sitting there thinking there are no physics at work in this scene. None whatsoever. And that kind of made it a little harder for me to, because it felt like there was no real pull on the people being sucked in, and so I don't know, that threw me out a little bit. But like I said, overall, I would say the production values were pretty decent.
Okay. Anyone else on production?
I mean, I thought that there's definitely as far as production, I mean, the animation is definitely the strongest point of the movie.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like a lot of the, I mean, apart from like the cutesy characters, I thought that it was definitely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the movie is definitely a triumph of style style, if not substance. Especially like when it came to like the Horn King and his minions. Like basically all that darker, more macabre scenery just looked amazing. Looks excellent. It was really well done.
I agree.
So and I also like when Gurgi jumps into the cauldron. That was a pretty cool sequence. Pretty well done.
What about you, Crow? What did you think of production?
Well, like I said before, Disney always top notch when it comes to production.
And you, Tammy? Tammy?
What your thing? It kind of broke up. What did you say?
What did you think of production?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I thought the animation was good, and the storyline wasn't too bad. I guess I don't. I don't know if it's just me or what. I mean, I didn't really think it was that dark, but then again, when I was a kid, I was already watching like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and I was staying up and watching the old black and white movies. So I guess if I would have saw this as a kid, it wouldn't have freaked me out. So.
Okay. And what did you think about production, Dustin?
Well, the animation style is about in line with. To me, it looked a lot like The Rescuers or Robin Hood in terms of the quality of the animation they were doing. I mean, it looks better here because I think that animation style is better for like a darker story like this. It's a little hard to. It doesn't really strike me as a Disney movie, like in my mind. Even though I've seen those other much more well-known Disney movies that use a pretty similar style, so it's got some different elements to it that make it stand out. So I mean, I think the production is fine. I mean, there's a few frames here and there where it's like that's kind of maybe not drawn the best it could be. But for the most part, I mean, it looks pretty good. And the added effects of like the lights and like the lightning and like the dark magic and the flames, like those stand out and like make the rest of the animation. Those really pop out from the rest of the animation. And I liked it. I mean, I think they did a pretty good job with it. It's kind of hard to think of what could really be improved given the era. I have a DVD of the Dragon's Lair games with those cutscenes, and I sort of want to look at that after having seen this and compare animation styles.
See, that's what I was saying. It's like there's a Don Bluth quality, which I believe he worked on that. So that
He did work on it.
But if you think about it, Disney recycled a lot of their animation at this time. That was one of the ways that they saved money. And matter of fact, I think he was one of the ones that taught them that. And I'm willing to bet that, because if you think about it, if you look at a lot of their films from this period, you can actually see that they traced over a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So my guess is that's why it has a lot of that feel into it, because they were using a lot of those old cells to save money and basically utilize that animation.
Definitely. As far as production goes, I thought it was pretty decent. I think Disney definitely does the macabre very well, especially in certain movies, and this one definitely shows it. I'm glad that I finally got to see this myself. So it is an interesting story. I don't think there was really that much of a problem writing wise, but hearing you talk, Brandon, about the too many comic relief characters, that I kind of agree with. Like they should have had just one, or if not, I don't think Fluter was necessarily needed per se. But then again, this has a runtime of like 80 minutes already. So I don't know. But that being said, this is the product that we have. And moving on to music, what did y'all think about the music?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, Elmer Bernstein. I mean, you can't go wrong with Elmer Bernstein. Between this movie, Ghostbusters, Animal House.
Yeah,
Elmer Bernstein definitely has an interesting
yeah.
Filmography.
Oh yeah, he was in part of the 1999 Wild Wild West.
Yeah, and also it's kind of unique among Disney, because this was one of among the few Disney movies of the time to not have any musical numbers.
Oh yeah,
Right.
Okay.
I was going to mention that it's very interesting. It also says the first Disney film to have full closing credits with music, and the first to have any sort of closing credits since Alice in Wonderland. Because they usually tended to do all their credits up front.
Yeah.
At least in the early days. So it's an interesting transition in that way. But
for
although
sure.
you kind of wonder if that was part of the reason why when they came back guns blazing with a full-on musical.
Well, it was also the first animated film that wasn't a musical, and did not contain any
also the first Disney movie, also the first animated Disney movie to get a PG rating.
Right, and it almost got a PG-13, I think. I was reading this thing here about Jeffrey Katzenberg tried to edit the film himself because it was too dark, and he was convinced to step back and let the filmmakers work on it. But yeah, it still ended up PG.
Oh, there was a slight goof that I noticed. When he came out with the sword, and escaped with the sword, he left the sheath behind in the crypt, but suddenly he had the sheath again later on, the sheath for the sword. So I don't know if anyone saw that. I noticed.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was thinking to myself, oh, he fixed it in post.
But in any case, going into favorite characters and/or favorite scenes. So, let's start with you, Jake. Did you have any favorite characters and or favorite scenes?
I'm not sure I have a strong favorite in this one. Arguably, I guess you could say the two kind of the sidekick characters, the minstrel and the princess. They're kind of fun characters. But really, I don't know that any of them really stood out to me. But as far as scenes, probably when and I keep calling them like generic words, but it's partly because I'm having trouble remembering their actual names. But what's his face? Fluter, I guess, was the musician who's actually voiced by Nigel Hawthorne. So that's kind of impressive there. Where I think Dave, I think you are the one who already alluded to this when they're trying to get Gurgi back, and he's the one who says, we're not going to give it away, but we'll trade you. I did like that he stood up and threw their words back at them. I thought that was kind of amusing, and I'll probably put that as my favorite, I guess.
Okay. Heading over to you, Crow. Favorite characters and or favorite scenes?
I don't know, the whole movie was just good. So, really have a favorite scene.
Okay. How about you, Forrest? Favorite character or characters and or favorite scenes?
All right, so for me, I would say favorite character is definitely the Horn King. Probably one of the scariest, most underrated Disney villains, and favorite scene is the art. When the Horn King raises his army of the dead.
Okay. What about you, Tammy?
What's his name? Gurky?
Gurgi.
Yeah, Gurky.
I like Gherkin. That sounds bad.
It sounds sounds more awesome.
I like him. He's my favorite character. Favorite scenes. I guess my favorite scene is the first time he wields that sword and sees what it can do, how it smashed that what was it, an axe that guy was wielding at him, and the sword just the sword lights up and it smashes it, and he wasn't expecting, it wasn't expecting, nobody was expecting it, and just everybody's reaction to the sword and then what it could do, so I think that would, for the most part, be my favorite scene, and of course when Gurky comes back to life.
Okay.
I think that's my favorite scene too, actually. When the sword just kind of, appears like a miracle and is just this amazing tool that really kind of carries them for a while. I thought it was really impressively animated, like the magic powers and stuff it has. So I've been doing a lot of work on like a fantasy game thing lately, so it's stuff like that is kind of in my mind, and I think I was extra impressed by the sword for that reason. So the ending is interesting too, because it pans away to the old man seeing them walking into the sunset in that scrying glass that the pig is in. And so it was did he know this was going to happen from the beginning when he sends the boy out into the woods with the pig? Did he foresee the entire movie? it kind of made me think a little. So.
Okay. And I know you just told us your favorite scene, but did you have a favorite character? Dustin?
Well, it feels like we get a lot of time with most of the characters, so it's nobody particularly sticks out to me. Our main character is kind of cool as just like a standard like fantasy almost a fantasy trope kind of a character. It's just like, I'm gonna have an adventure. Yeah, and there's something to appreciate it in the simplicity of that trope.
Okay. Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Favorite character or characters or favorite scenes?
Well, I would say the princess, because though I don't feel like she was fleshed out as much as she should be, I could say that for all the characters. So I don't really hold that against her. And I would say as far as favorite scene, that's a hard one. I'm not sure I even have one. I guess favorite scene is where they're fighting over the cauldron at the end, and you get to see that kind of cool face melt scene, which is kind of neat.
Okay.
With the Horn King getting himself sucked up like a vacuum cleaner. Suck. I keep thinking Spaceballs when I hear that.
See, what's interesting is when we first meet the princess, she says that she's a princess, and yet later the Horn King calls her just a scullery maid. So I wonder if she was in fact a real princess in any way, shape, or form.
You can also take anything he says with a grain of salt, but But
Well, if the Horn King had captured a princess, wouldn't he make her like a scullery maid?
That
seems likely.
That seems likely.
For his own amusement.
That seems likely. I didn't think about that from that perspective, but I would have to say that even though the character reminds me a lot of Gollum, Gurki is my favorite character as well, and he's most redeemable for his sacrifice. So, and I also do. I'm not trying to steal yours, Tammy, but I do like that initial finding of the sword and the excitement of it all, and what the sword is able to do and all that jazz. It was pretty cool. I do have to admit the whole lightning and stuff that it's able to do and whatnot is. I wish I had that kind of a sword. But that being said, does anyone else have anything else to add? Alrighty. I know that Disney had originally gotten the rights for the novels involved in this in 1939, so it took them some time to actually adapt a story for this anyways. So
yeah, I think they required the rights to this like back in this, I want to say it was back in the 70s they acquired the rights. Early 70s they acquired the rights to it, and apparently the author he didn't quite disown the movie, he didn't quite badmouth the movie. You could tell the author, we could tell, was not very Lloyd Alexander. You could tell he wasn't very, you could kind of get the impression that he wasn't very happy with it.
Which seems like the case for many writers that Disney acquired things for.
I was going to say P.L. Travers reportedly hated Mary Poppins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But she wasn't a very nice person either, from what I've heard in real life.
Right. And it took a tremendous amount of convincing and cajoling for
You mean
Walt
Julie
Disney to
Andrews?
well,
P.L. Travers, the
yeah.
P.L. Travers was the author of the Mary Poppins books
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the movie was adapted from.
There was a movie that glossed over
Yeah.
it.
Say,
And but apparently she wasn't very happy with what Disney did with her story.
yeah, she was very it was an interesting song and dance to get the movie made in the first place. The Retold and Saving Mr. Banks, which was a fun movie itself, but I'm sure that was a heavily fictionalized account.
I would say a very Disneyfied account of how Mary Poppins got made.
Right. But it was interesting. The But yeah, you would almost expect if Disney gets hold of your property, there will be liberties taken with it.
I mean, that's how it is. I mean, look. I mean, if you go back and read any of the original fairy tales that they adapt a lot of their movies from. I mean, Little Mermaid ends with Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid ends with her committing suicide in the original story.
Right.
That's true. From Hans Christian Andersen's original story, yes. But in any case, hopefully, you ladies and gentlemen out there that have been listening to us have enjoyed our discussion. And hopefully let us know down in the comments what you thought of it. And if you have not seen it, go out and see it. At least go and see it once. I think.
I'll say, yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
I think you'll either enjoy it or you won't. So like, share, and subscribe. And so everyone say good night.
Right.
Good night.
All right, Jim Bob.